Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. It has been months since I've released. Things hopefully are back on track. Long story, everything is behind and everything is good. So let's get on with this video. Today we are going to quote Plato and we're going to talk about how his quote relates to photography and possibly to other areas in our life. So let's go. The quote of the day is, and I got it here, "I'm trying to think, don't confuse me with facts." Now, to those of us that are logic-oriented, common sense-oriented, all that kind of crap, a quote like that doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, come on, facts are facts and we need them to get our information out for it to make sense, for it to be relevant, right? But are there actually times when the facts get in the way? That's what we're going to look at today. As educated and civilized human beings, we understand more than anyone, I'm getting excited, that an argument backed by facts has a much better chance of being successful. That's why so many people study the facts, right? That's why they look up the facts and they study them before entering into a serious or, what's the word I'm thinking, or important argument, right? Now here's my own statistic, right? This is like pulling it out of thin air, but at least I tell you I'm pulling it out of thin air, and I'm basing it on the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 principle. And I'm going to say that 80% of people probably manipulate facts in their favor, as do many pharma companies, as we saw during COVID, many politicians, news channels, and people out to prove their point, right? But that altogether is a topic for a different YouTube channel. We're going to stick to photography. Now back to the 20% that stick to the facts without any intention of manipulating the story or the agenda or driving their point. Most of the time, the facts are useful when making a point. But are they always necessary? That's the question that keeps coming up. Are they always necessary? Before we go on, I have water here. I want you to stop, pause, and take your water. Some of you might be choosing tea or coffee or something else. Take that break. Keep hydrated. The weather's turning warm here in the northeast, southeast. I'm still thinking of New York. Southeast, and I'm in Atlanta, the Atlanta area. But wherever you are in the world, we all still need to be hydrated. So back to the video. Many times my conversations with friends, close friends, acquaintances, gear more around what I've heard and seen and what they've heard and seen. It's interesting to me what they've heard and seen because these are people I trust. These are intelligent, successful people that I highly trust, right? So I'm interested in what they've seen and what they've heard, right? And how they perceive it. So I mean, you can call those facts, it's their facts, but it's not really the facts we're talking about here. We're talking about statistics, right? And these are not statistics, right? So this is when I'm saying, not always do I want to sit down and hear numbers being spewed out and thrown at me. Sometimes I want to hear what people think, how they perceive things, how they see things. This lets us wander and wonder a little more, and it lets us be more creative and silly with our ideas. This is no different than a group of photographers gather around talking about the usefulness or uselessness of a particular lens, right? We have the stats, we have the numbers, we have the, all of the details, but sometimes it's about our experience with it, not so much what the numbers are telling us. While measured sharpness, flare, and bokeh, or the facts, may be important to some, lens character and flexibility, not so factual in this case, might be more important to others. Personally, I do look at data when I'm looking to buy a lens, a camera, or anything for that matter. But those boring details are most of the time, not the deciding factor for me. I say most of the time because sometimes they are. Sometimes one of those details, right, one of those specs is the deciding factor, right? How quick something focuses, or the megapixels, or the way it handles noise in low light. Sometimes that is what we're looking for, how many frames per second it can shoot. But many times, cameras have gotten so good that it really isn't about that many times. We care about other things too. The way I do this, and maybe this will help you in the future if you're not doing this already. The way I do this is I look at the data in order to rule out any really, really bad piece of equipment, whether it's a lens, a camera, a stereo, speakers, whatever it is I'm buying, right? I look at the data and I look at the data and the reviews to rule out any really bad equipment, right? If I hear really bad news on or reviews on reliability, right, quality, and then I'm looking at the numbers and they're not really good, I rule out the really bad equipment first, right? And that leaves me a subset of lenses or cameras or whatever it is I'm looking for, right? So if I'm looking for a particular lens, right, a particular millimeter, say a 24 millimeter 1.4, right? Say I start by looking at 5 different lenses and I look at the data and I rule out 2 immediately because they're too soft or they don't focus quickly or blah, blah, blah. Now I'm left with 3, right? And those 3 are all pretty decent. Am I actually going to sit down and drive into the numbers at that point? Not me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to friends that have one of those 3 lenses, or I'm going to try to, rent or borrow the lenses. And maybe I'll borrow one and I'll get opinions from my friends on the others, right? If I don't want to, rent all of them. But the point is, at that point, I'm going with my feel, my gut feel, right? And then I make a decision based on that. Now, I'm not telling you to do this, right? Some people are uncomfortable doing that. If it's all about numbers for you, then it's all about numbers. I'm not going to change your mind, right? And I'm not trying to. But just think that many times, like I said, equipment is so good nowadays, whether you're talking about speakers or stereos or whatever it is you're talking about, right? Video cameras, anything, right? Headphones. It's going to be a matter of what you prefer. When you put them in, is it a little bassier than you wanted? Is it a little tingier than you wanted? Metallic, sounding, right? It's really up to us at that point. And when I say putting the numbers aside, I'm looking at that point, at a little more of the feeling part of it. These are the things I look at. How does it feel in my hands? How does it feel in my hands? Does it feel cheap and plasticky, or does it feel dense and heavy? When I move the rings, are they tight? Do they feel nice? Or do they feel chintzy and loose, right? Is it a plastic mount if I'm looking at lenses, right? Or is it a metallic mount? Maybe that's important, depending on the size of the lens, right? How are the optics? How do they look? How does everything feel? That's the first one. Does what I'm looking at make sense for what I need? If I'm buying this for hiking, is the size good to put in a backpack? Is the weight good? Or is it too big and heavy? If it's for weddings, does it have the criteria that I need there, right? The aperture, all that stuff. And that's more of a spec. But I'm going to hold that too and say, do I want to be walking around 8 hours with this thing in my hand? Am I going to need a monopod, right? Is that okay? Or is it okay to carry every day? Questions. Here's one that people are going to say, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. How does it look on me? Now I can't wear this, right? How does it look on me? Blah. But people buy cameras because of the way they look. People buy lenses because of the way they look. How does it look on me? Juan, that's so superficial. I can't believe you're even talking about this. No, it's not. Because we live in a world of reality and perception, right? People's perceptions, which is their reality. So when we talk about that, we're talking about you walk into a wedding with a little camera, my street photography camera, and this little lens, right? People are not going to take you serious, and they're going to wonder what they paid for and if they made a mistake, right? So there's a certain aspect of you want to walk in with a good gear, a good piece of lens that's beefy and big in your hand, because then people are going to look and go, oh, that must be the photographer, right? Unfortunately, this is a reality, right? Now, if you don't care about that stuff and you try to make a name for yourself shooting weddings with a little street photography camera and a basic lens, that's fine, more power to you. But I know that even me as a photographer, I've been in weddings where I look at the photographer and I go, what? You got to be kidding me. You're shooting that wedding with that? I have a better camera sitting at home, right? And this is before I started doing weddings. So even I was doing that back then, right? You kind of feel bad for the couple because the photographer could be using better gear. Now, can he take or she take really good pictures with what they have? Of course, we've talked about that in other videos. You can take amazing pictures with very basic gear. But you don't want to go through the challenges that basic gear gives you. You want everything to flow easy, and you get that with better gear. So how does it make me feel? Very important. People will buy a Leica German camera because it looks beautiful on them, right? It's like jewelry hanging from their neck. Am I going to criticize that? No. Why? Why? Because I don't have the money to buy one now. I'm going to poke fun at somebody because they did that? Absolutely. If that makes you happy and that's going to make you take your camera out more often because you like the way it looks on you, excellent. Go for it, right? Hopefully, if everything goes well, I'm looking at a Leica myself for next year. So, but I'm carving out a market for that camera. I have a specific need for that camera that I'm not really diving into too seriously right now because I don't have that camera. So anyway, let's move on. And last but not least, how does it make me feel? How does it make me feel? Back to that Leica hanging around your shoulders and looking nice on you. How does that make me feel? It makes me feel wonderful, right? And when it makes me feel wonderful, I'm going to take this camera out and I'm going to use it more. And because many times I know many people that have nice cameras. They bought cameras to use because they realize that their phone doesn't give them the resolution they need for making prints. And you know what? They don't use their camera because this is just too convenient. And they don't want to carry another piece of electronics. So they're stuck with the camera sitting at home and back to the phone. And you wonder, what did they buy the camera for, right? And we do that to a certain extent. I carry my phone around more than anything. But I do try to remember to carry my little Canon M6 Mark II because it's a wonderful small camera. I put a pancake lens on it, a prime, and a 35mm equivalent, and I'm off. And I can shoot just about everything with that, right? So, you get more flexibility for cropping and for enlarging and for printing and all that stuff, right? So how equipment makes me feel is very important. How it makes me feel, my Fujifilm GFX 100S, amazing camera in my hand. Every time I grab it, I have to spin it around and look at it and admire the beauty and the craftsmanship. That's wonderful because when I'm shooting that camera, I feel in tune with it, right? Just like when you're driving a car that you feel here, right? You drive it a little differently and you feel connected to the car, and all of that matters. And if you don't believe me that matters, ask a race car driver, a professional Formula One or NASCAR driver, if the connection between them and their automobile matters, and come back to me. So these are ultimately the factors I use to make a decision when I'm buying a piece of gear, piece of equipment for my camera, for anything for that matter, right? For my office, right? Whether it's a printer or scanner for negatives, whatever it is, I look at the details, I look at the specs, I narrow it down to a couple of them, and then I look at the way they look, I read reviews on how they feel and how they operate and how easy they are, and then I just make my decision. And hence, the quote, "Don't confuse me with facts when I'm trying to think." If I want to be creative, goofy, dreamy, or even irrational, facts are just going to get in the way. How many times, answer this question for me, okay? If you think all of this is crazy, how many times have you had the facts in your hands, right? And the product is not so great. It's not so nice looking. It's a little expensive. It's slightly unreliable, maybe even a bit ugly. And you buy it anyway. Why? Why do you do that? Why do I do that? Why do any of us do that? Because we've already made a decision long before that we liked it, whatever it is, right? Whatever that decision is based on. And many times that's all that matters. So we're back to feelings. We're not back to the specs. So somebody might say, well, that's a mistake. You're making a mistake if you're buying something based just on your feelings. Well, that depends. It depends. If you ask the person that did it and they bought it, right? And they're happy as heck because they bought this product and they're using it every day and they're ecstatic using it, then no, that person did not make a mistake. Maybe it's a mistake for you, but it's not a mistake for them, right? I've bought things that my friends have told me, dude, I think you're better off going with this one. And I'll look at it and I'm confirmation bias. I'll ask 10 people. And if one person agrees with me, I'll go, ha, yeah, I knew it. I knew somebody agreed with me. That's It's meant to be. I'm buying that one, right? Even though 9 people already told me that was not the way to go. Confirmation bias, in case you don't know what that is. That's what it is. You're looking for somebody to confirm your bias, right? Whether it's a good bias or a bad bias, but you're looking for confirmation. So we've all done it. We've all bought a car that way because we just love the color or love the way it looked or whatever, right? And people told us it's unreliable, it's not so fast, it's a gas guzzler, blah, blah, blah. Who cares, right? It's the car I want, right? It's gonna make me happy. So there you go. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And let me know if you have been affected by confirmation bias, which we just talked about. And if sometimes the facts actually get in your way when you're thinking creatively, when you're thinking spiritually, when you're being a little goofy, when you just want to have a good conversation about something and pick people's brains, do the facts get in the way for you? Or are you the type of person that really needs those facts? Let me know. Please like the video below on your left, subscribe down here on your right, and we will catch up with each other again, hopefully, next week. This was a long break between videos, and I'm not going to do this anymore. I apologize, and for those of you that do follow me, my sincerest apologies. Let's catch up again next week. I have a bunch of cool topics that I'm rolling out. I started a bunch of camera and lens reviews last year that I never completed, and I'd like to get through those. These are vintage cameras and stuff, so we're going to get them out there. Love you guys. Please take care of yourselves. Keep hydrated, stay happy and healthy, and we will catch up soon. Ciao for now.